Her daughter forgot her birthday, but remembered to use her card at brunch. Elaine Monroe, retired accountant and widow, didn't argue. By evening, her daughter's card declined mid-swipe, her boutique lease revoked, and every account locked tight. Elaine had spent years funding her child's independence. Now, she was done financing disrespect, one transaction at a time. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Elaine woke to the quiet. No birds chirping outside her window, no hum of the city beyond. Just the stillness of a house that had gotten used to her own solitary rhythms. The sun slanted through the blinds, casting long shadows over the room as she stretched, her bones creaking like old wood. She reached for her phone beside the bed, her fingers grazing the screen. No message. Not from Jordan. Not from anyone. It wasn't a surprise, but it still stung. Her daughter had never been good about staying in touch, at least, not without a reason. Elaine glanced at the time. 9:23 a.m. She dragged herself out of bed, her slippers warm against the cool floor. The house was quiet, but there was always a little hum of unease when it came to Jordan. Elaine couldn't shake the feeling that something was off today, maybe because it was her day. She headed downstairs, flicking on the coffee machine. As the rich scent of coffee filled the kitchen, she unlocked her phone and scrolled. Jordan's social media was always meticulously curated, each post a performance, a crafted slice of her independent life. There it was, a latte selfie. Jordan in a too big sweater, the kind that made her look even more effortlessly cool than she really was. Her lips curled in a mock serene smile. The post was tagged at a Pearl District cafe, a trendy spot she knew Jordan loved to visit. Elaine blinked. That was the moment the knot in her stomach tightened. No happy birthday, Mom, or even a simple I love you in the comments. Just a latte in her hand and the quiet buzz of her life spinning forward without her. Elaine's thumb hovered over the screen, debating if she should drop a comment. Something snarky. Something cutting. Instead, she pressed her lips together and set the phone aside. No need to give Jordan the satisfaction of a reaction. She wasn't going to beg for attention. She was done with that. The phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. A notification. But it wasn't from Jordan. She glanced at the alert. Transaction alert. She frowned, her stomach sinking lower with every passing second. The amount? $138.47. Her mind clicked, fast, pulling the pieces together. Brunch for two. The digits on the screen burned into her vision. She recognized it. Her card. Her name. And her daughter's name. Slipping through the cracks. Using what she had. What Elaine had given her. Elaine felt a chill run up her spine. She didn't have to check to know the transaction was from Jordan. She could already hear it. The careless tap of her daughter's fingers on a screen somewhere, ordering without a second thought. Without a moment's pause. The silence pressed in. Suffocating. She got up from the counter and walked to the window. Outside, the neighbors were already tending to their gardens, their morning routines carrying on like nothing had changed. She should have been out there with them, feeling like part of something. Instead, she felt like an afterthought in her own life. How had things come to this? The doorbell rang, breaking her reverie. Elaine didn't move immediately. Maybe it was a delivery, maybe a salesperson. But then she heard the unmistakable sound of Carla's voice calling from the porch. Elaine, you better be awake. Got you your favorite. Carla had been a constant in her life for decades. Brash, loyal, and always there when it mattered most. Elaine opened the door to find her standing with a bouquet of fresh flowers, her expression soft yet knowing. Happy birthday, best friend, Carla said, holding the flowers out with a smile. Elaine accepted them, taking in the familiar scent. Thank you. Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, thin and distant. Carla's gaze flicked over Elaine's shoulder, then back to her. "You okay?" Elaine nodded slowly, though the words didn't come. She wanted to say something. She wanted to confess the frustration that had been simmering under her skin. But for once, silence felt like the only answer that fit. Carla studied her for a long moment, then patted her gently on the arm. "Well, whatever it is, you're not facing it alone. Not anymore." Elaine took a deep breath, letting the scent of the flowers settle in her chest. Something was shifting, slowly, quietly, beneath the surface. She didn't know what it was yet, but she could feel it. "I think I need to do something," Elaine said, almost to herself. Her voice was firmer now, the decision forming in her mind. Carla raised an eyebrow, sensing the change. "What do you mean?" Elaine didn't answer. She didn't have to. Carla could already tell. Elaine had reached the end of something, the beginning of a different kind of quiet. She stood there for a moment, gazing out the window. Her phone buzzed again, but she didn't reach for it. The answers weren't in the notifications anymore. She had something bigger to decide. And for the first time in a long while, Elaine Monroe felt like she might just have the strength to make it happen. Elaine sat at the kitchen table long after Carla had left, the flowers now resting in a chipped glass vase near the sink. The light outside had shifted, late morning sliding toward noon. She still hadn't touched her coffee. It sat cooling beside her phone, both reminders of things gone lukewarm too fast. She opened her banking app, thumb hovering over the login. The familiar blue and white logo stared back, sterile and impersonal. For years, this account had been a reflection of her discipline. Every cent tracked, every expense justified. She'd built her life around numbers that always told the truth. Until today. The numbers stared back, and they told a different story now. A string of recent transactions blinked up at her. Small purchases that suddenly formed a pattern. A manicure in the Pearl District, gas at a station near Jordan's loft, boutique supply orders that didn't match any invoices Elaine remembered approving. Her throat tightened. She clicked into one, then another. Then the 138.47 charge glared at her like an accusation. Her phone buzzed again. A new number. "Mrs. Monroe?" The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and unexpectedly kind. "This is Dylan Porter from Cascadia Bank's fraud department. We're reviewing an authorization alert, a restaurant charge under your name. Just wanted to verify it wasn't a duplicate or possible misuse." Elaine swallowed. "No, it's not a duplicate." "Okay then," he said, the faint clatter of a keyboard in the background. "You recognize the transaction?" "I do," she said, steadying her voice, "and I'd like to freeze the account immediately." A short pause. "Right away, ma'am. Can I ask the reason? Just for our records." Elaine hesitated. Then softly, "Let's just say, someone's been helping themselves for too long." There was a brief silence, followed by a faint chuckle. Low, almost approving. "You're the one making the move, huh?" Elaine didn't respond, but she didn't need to. The quiet click of his keyboard was all the confirmation she needed. When the call ended, she sat back in her chair, staring at the phone. Her pulse was quick, but controlled, her breath steady. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. For the first time in years, she'd drawn a line and meant it. Across town, Jordan laughed too loudly. The restaurant buzzed with Saturday chatter, every table filled with people sipping overpriced coffee and picking at artfully plated pancakes. "This place always makes me feel so accomplished," Lily said, twirling her straw, her voice sliding effortlessly between sweet and smug. Jordan smiled, adjusting her sunglasses. "You are accomplished. We both are. Women building their own empire. We should toast to that." Lily raised her glass. To being our own bosses. Jordan clinked her mimosa against Lily's, the bubbles catching the light. Somewhere in the back of her mind, there was a flicker of guilt. Something about the date. The nagging thought she'd forgotten something important. But it dissolved as fast as it came. The waiter dropped off the check, folded neatly in a leather sleeve. Jordan pulled out her card without even glancing at the total. The motion was instinct by now. She'd done it 100 times. Swipe. Waiting. The machine blinked red. She frowned. Tried again. Red. Could you try that one more time? Jordan said, flashing her most practiced smile. The waiter hesitated. I did. It's declining. Lily leaned forward, smirking slightly. That's odd. Thought you said your mom kept plenty in that account. Jordan's smile faltered. She does. I mean, she did. It's probably just a flag or something. I'll fix it later. Here, Lily said, sliding her own card across with an exaggerated sigh. I've got it. Jordan felt the heat rise up her neck. She could feel the people at the next table glance their way, sensing the awkwardness, the small fracture in the illusion she'd built. The latte selfie on her feed this morning, the curated version of independence. It was unraveling in real time. When the waiter walked away, Lily stirred her coffee, voice smooth as silk. Maybe it's a sign. Time to really cut the cord. Jordan forced a laugh. Yeah, maybe. But inside, her chest tightened. Back in Montevilla, Elaine stood by the window, watching a single leaf spiral down onto the lawn. She didn't feel triumphant, just lighter. A kind of peace that came from no longer pretending everything was fine. Her phone buzzed again, a notification from the bank confirming the freeze. She pressed her lips together, exhaling slowly. A text popped up seconds later. Jordan. Hey, Mom. Weird question. Did the bank call you? My card just stopped working. Probably nothing, but can you check? Elaine stared at the message. The screen glowed in the dim light, waiting for a response. She set the phone down, untouched. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves scattered across the yard like tiny bursts of movement, change in motion. Elaine reached for her coffee, took a slow sip, and allowed herself the faintest smile. She wasn't sure what would come next, but for once, she was the one writing the script. The phone sat there on the table, its screen glowing faintly in the dim light of the kitchen. Elaine stared at it, fingers twitching at her sides. It wasn't a long message from Jordan, just a simple question, but the words hovered, waiting for her to respond. Jordan. Hey, Mom. Weird question. Did the bank call you? My card just stopped working. Probably nothing, but can you check? Elaine's thumb hovered over the screen, the impulse to answer flickering. But she didn't touch the screen. Instead, she just stared at it, the question lingering in the air between her and the phone. For a moment, she could almost feel Jordan's voice on the other end, sweet and concerned, pretending like everything was normal. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Elaine took a long breath, the weight of everything pressing down on her chest. She couldn't answer, not yet. Not this time. The phone buzzed again, sharp and insistent. Another text. Jordan. Did you freeze my card? Elaine clenched her jaw. The tightness in her stomach growing. She was tempted to pick it up and send a response. A quick, cutting reply that would put things in their place. But she didn't. Her thumb remained still, hovering above the screen. She knew better. She'd learned that lesson long ago. The phone buzzed again, but this time it was different. It wasn't a text. It was a call. Elaine let it ring out, her eyes fixed on the glowing screen. The name Jordan flashed, but she didn't answer. The call went to voicemail. She could hear it in her mind already. the voice. The fake sweetness of it, trying to sound casual but just barely holding back irritation. Mom, why are you doing this? You know I didn't mean any harm. Please call me back. Elaine shut her eyes for a moment, letting the silence swallow the sound of the phone. A long exhale left her lips as she set the phone down. For a second, she almost wanted to laugh, but there was no humor in it. Not anymore. The doorbell rang, dragging her from the moment. She stood slowly, pushing the chair back, and walked to the door. There was Carla, as expected, with her knowing look. "You're not answering her, huh?" Carla asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. She looked at Elaine, her eyes sharp. "Good. But this is just the start, you know that?" Elaine closed the door behind her, leaning against it. The weight of the last few days was bearing down on her, but there was a quiet strength settling into her bones. "I don't want to talk to her," Elaine said softly, the words tasting strange in her mouth. But they were true. "Not yet. She doesn't get it." Carla's eyes narrowed. A slight nod of agreement. "She never did. You've been giving her everything she wanted, but it's never enough. She thinks you're just gonna keep letting her get away with it." Elaine didn't respond immediately. She wasn't sure what to say, and for once, she didn't feel the need to. Carla was right. But there was something more now. Something deeper. She knew what was coming, and she knew it wasn't going to be easy. Elaine walked over to the desk, opening the drawer and pulling out a faded folder. She slid it across the table to Carla. "I funded 70% of the boutique," Elaine said, her voice steady. The words felt cold as they left her mouth, but there was a sense of finality in them too. She doesn't know what that means. She doesn't understand the weight of it. Carla flipped open the folder. "That's a lot of money. And a lot of trust." "Not anymore, though." Elaine nodded, her mind already moving ahead to the next step. She had to act. She had to take control of what she'd built, and there was no going back now. Her phone buzzed again. A new number. Dylan from the fraud department. She let it ring once before answering. "Mrs. Monroe?" Dylan's voice was calm, like he'd been expecting the call. "I'm just following up. We've noticed some more unusual activity on your account from last week. Unauthorized charges, gas stations, restaurant tabs, things that don't match your typical spending patterns." Elaine listened closely, feeling a strange satisfaction creep over her. Her account. Her money. She was no longer the one being used. She was in charge now. "I'm aware," Elaine said, her voice low but certain. "I'm starting a list. A spreadsheet, actually. I want everything on record." Dylan's tone softened, almost like he was offering support. "I'll send over the details we have. You should take a look, Mrs. Monroe." Elaine hung up the phone, her fingers already swiping across the screen. She opened a new spreadsheet, each line a record of betrayal. The list of charges, of misused trust, grew longer by the second. "Don't wait too long," Carla warned, her voice sharp now. "You've let her slide for too long already." Elaine didn't answer. She just typed, each click of the keyboard a small, final act of resolution. The list was growing. The silence in the room felt heavy, but Elaine wasn't afraid of it anymore. Not with this new resolve settling over her. She didn't need to wait for Jordan's call. She didn't need to reply. What was coming next, she knew, would be something Jordan never expected. The next morning arrived gray and damp, the kind of Portland drizzle that never quite turned into rain. Elaine drove through it with both hands on the wheel, wipers rhythmically whispering across the glass. She hadn't slept much, but she didn't need sleep. Her mind had already decided. The little bell above the law office door jingled when she stepped inside. Reed and Associates, a narrow, unassuming space tucked between a coffee shop and a dog groomer. Thomas Reed had been her estate attorney for nearly 20 years, the kind of man who rarely smiled but always remembered her preferred brand of pen. He looked up from his desk when she entered, adjusting his glasses. "Elaine, it's been a while." "It has," she said, slipping out of her coat. Her voice was calm, even. "I think it's time I made some updates." He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Well, that sounds either very good or very bad. Which kind of update are we talking?" Elaine sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "I want to revisit my trust." Thomas opened a folder, the faint scent of old paper filling the air. "You're still listed as sole trustee. Beneficiary. You left everything to Jordan. Real estate, savings, boutique partnership. She's got it all, by default." Elaine gave a small, humorless laugh. "By default." She repeated softly. "That's about right." Thomas studied her for a moment. "You sound resolved." Elaine met his gaze. "I am." He nodded slowly, pen poised above his notepad. "You want to change that?" Her answer came without hesitation. "She changed it first." Thomas's pen paused in midair. "I see." "She's been taking from me for years," Elaine continued, her tone steady but edged. "Money, credit, time. And when I finally said no, she acted like I'd broken some contract. Maybe I did. Just not the one she thinks." Thomas leaned back, tapping his pen lightly against the desk. "What do you have in mind?" "I want the trust restructured. I want control shifted out of her hands completely. She doesn't inherit everything. She inherits what she's earned." He nodded, the faintest hint of respect in his eyes. "And what has she earned?" Elaine thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Closure." Thomas allowed himself a small smile. "Poetic. I'll make sure it's airtight." He began drafting notes, legal phrases, percentages, successor appointments. Elaine watched the ink fill the page, feeling something loosen in her chest. Every word was a reclamation. When he looked up again, his expression was thoughtful. "Would you like to designate an alternate heir, should Jordan challenge the terms?" Elaine's gaze drifted toward the rain-streaked window. Outside, people hurried by under umbrellas, heads bent low. She thought of all the years she'd spent saving, calculating, giving without question. The idea that her life's work could become another tool in Jordan's performance made her stomach twist. "I want it to go somewhere it'll do some good," she said finally. "Maybe a scholarship. Something for women who actually need a start." Thomas jotted the note. "Name of the beneficiary foundation?" Elaine smiled faintly. "Haven't decided yet. But I'll know it when I see it." He nodded. "And the boutique?" Her eyes flickered. "Add a buyout clause. If Jordan or her partner ever try to transfer ownership or dissolve assets without my consent, it triggers immediate liquidation. Proceeds go to the trust." "That's firm," he said almost approvingly. "That's fair," Elaine replied. They worked in silence for a few minutes, the rain tapping steadily against the window. Thomas typed, the steady rhythm of the keyboard underscoring the finality of each decision. When he finished, he swiveled the screen toward her. "This changes everything, Elaine. You'll need to sign once we finalize, but are you sure?" She read the document slowly, each word landing like a stone in still water. Then she nodded. "Completely." Thomas reached for the folder. "I'll prepare the official version. Expect it within 48 hours." Elaine stood, smoothing her jacket. "Thank you, Thomas." He gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You're not the first parent to come in here heartbroken, but you might be the first who looks relieved." Elaine paused at the door. "That's because this isn't heartbreak," she said quietly. "It's housekeeping." Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets gleamed with that after-storm sheen, everything sharper, cleaner. She felt the same. As she walked toward her car, her phone vibrated again. A text from Jordan. Just a single line this time. Jordan. Mom, can we talk? Please? Elaine's hand tightened around the phone, but she didn't open it. Instead, she slipped it into her coat pocket, started the car, and drove away, toward a future that, for once, belonged only to her. Elaine sat at her dining table, a stack of old folders spread before her like relics from another life. The late afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting soft stripes across the papers. Dust motes hung in the light, swirling lazily as if even time had slowed to watch what she was about to do. She flipped through each folder with deliberate care. Tax forms, receipts, loan statements, signatures looping across dotted lines. And then she found it. The boutique lease agreement. The corner of the document was slightly curled, the ink faded but unmistakable. Her signature. Jordan's. The date stamped neatly beneath. She ran a finger along her own handwriting. Steady, neat, precise. She remembered signing it. She'd been proud then, maybe even a little naive. The day they opened Juniper and Slate had been one of the few times she'd seen Jordan's eyes truly light up. Back then, it had felt like a shared dream. Now, it looked like evidence. Elaine adjusted her glasses and began reading every clause as though it were scripture. The further she read, the more the realization settled in. Her name was still on everything. The property lease, the insurance policy, even the equipment coverage. Jordan and Lily might have been the face of the business, but Elaine still owned the bones. A quiet satisfaction spread through her. All these years, Jordan had strutted around the boutique like it was her kingdom. But the deed, the literal, legal backbone, still belonged to Elaine Monroe. The phone chimed. A notification from Instagram. Elaine wasn't one to scroll much anymore, but Carla had taught her enough to keep an eye on things. The post was from Juniper and Slate's account, a 30-second reel. Lily stood in the boutique, sleek hair tucked behind one ear, a latte in hand. The background music was upbeat, the caption bright. Being women-owned means knowing when to cut toxic ties. Growth means independence. The video flashed to a clip of Jordan laughing, throwing her arm around Lily's shoulder. Elaine exhaled slowly through her nose, watching until the video looped. Then she hit mute. Carla, sitting across from her, sipped her tea. Well, she said finally, they don't know what ownership really means, do they? Elaine looked up, lips curving slightly. No, she said. They don't. She turned back to the lease, running her eyes over the fine print. There's a sublease clause, she murmured. They've been using part of the property for retail expansions. That's not permitted without my written consent. Carla leaned forward, eyes glinting. You're telling me they've been operating under your name this whole time? Every invoice, every shipment, every liability, Elaine said. If someone trips in that shop, the lawsuit lands on my doorstep. Carla let out a low whistle. Then it's time they started reading the fine print. Elaine reached for her phone. Thomas? By the time she stepped into Thomas Reed's office again, evening had settled over Portland. The rain had started up, soft but steady, tapping against the window. Thomas looked up as she entered, already sensing the weight of what she carried in her bag. You found something? Elaine nodded, pulling the folder free. The original lease agreement. My name's still on it. He skimmed through the pages, his brow tightening. And you're the primary lessee. That means... It means, Elaine interrupted. I have the right to terminate. Thomas looked at her, a faint grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. You're not wasting any time. Time's the only thing I've already given her for free, she said evenly. He tapped the desk with his pen. We can prepare a lease pullout. Calculate back rent for the years they've used your name as collateral. It'll be clean, legal, unavoidable. Do it, she said. Thomas nodded. 30 days notice? 30, Elaine confirmed. Let's give her a month to remember who helped her build her empire. 2 days later, the boutique shimmered under pale afternoon light when Elaine parked across the street. She didn't go inside. She just watched through the front window. The racks of curated clothes, the carefully arranged candles, the fake plants. Jordan was behind the counter, phone in hand, laughing with Lily. Elaine opened her folder and pulled out the envelope Thomas had couriered that morning. Thick, official, her name embossed at the top. She checked the address one last time, then walked across the street, heels clicking against the wet pavement. The door chimed as she entered, the sound crisp, final. Jordan looked up, surprise flickering into something cautious. Mom? Elaine didn't answer right away. She crossed the room, set the envelope neatly on the counter, and met her daughter's gaze. You'll want to read that carefully, she said, her tone calm but sharp enough to cut through the hum of the boutique's ambient playlist. Jordan frowned, picking it up. What is this? Elaine adjusted her purse strap. 30 days notice, lease termination. Lily blinked. Wait, you can't… Elaine's voice stayed even. My name's still on the lease, on the insurance, on everything that keeps these lights on. She glanced around the store once, her eyes lingering on the logo by the window. It's time I stop footing the bill for your independence. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Even the music seemed to fade into silence. Then Elaine turned and walked out, the door closing behind her with a satisfying click. Elaine heard the car before she saw it. Tires crunching over the gravel, engine cutting sharply, door slamming hard enough to shake the quiet morning. She didn't flinch. She'd been expecting this. Through the kitchen window, she caught a flash of red, Jordan's coat, then the sight of her daughter storming across the lawn, a crumpled white envelope clenched in her hand. Her movements were quick, uneven, like someone who'd just learned the ground beneath her feet wasn't really hers. The screen door rattled. Mom! Jordan's voice cut through the still air. You wouldn't actually do this? Elaine set her coffee cup down, taking her time before turning. Do what? Jordan stepped closer, the letter shaking in her hand. This! She waved it in the air like an accusation. You can't shut down the store. You can't just evict your own daughter. Elaine regarded her calmly. I'm not shutting anything down. I'm rebranding. Jordan blinked, caught off guard. Rebranding? You're not serious. Oh, I'm very serious. The porch creaked as Elaine stepped outside. The air was crisp, heavy with that damp Portland chill. Jordan's hair was pulled back too tightly, her lipstick smeared at one corner, a detail Elaine would have ignored once, but now it looked like a crack in the armor. You're making a mistake, Jordan said, her voice trembling between anger and disbelief. This isn't just your business. I've built that place. I've spent years creating that brand, that image. Elaine cut her off gently. On my signature. My insurance. My capital. That's what built it. Jordan's mouth opened, then closed again. The fight drained slightly from her eyes, replaced with something Elaine hadn't seen in years. Fear. Before either could say another word, a car door slammed again. Lily's voice floated across the yard, softer, controlled. Jordan, maybe let's just take a breath, okay? Elaine turned toward her. Watching Lily approach. Perfect posture, perfect timing, the peacemaker act rehearsed to the syllable. She carried herself like someone who'd never once had to clean up her own messes. Mrs. Monroe, Lily began, her tone syrupy and smooth. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Jordan was just upset. We can fix this without… Elaine's gaze didn't waver. No misunderstanding. The boutique operates under a lease I own. That lease has been terminated. Effective 30 days from receipt. Lily blinked, smile faltering. You're bluffing. You wouldn't put your own daughter through that. Elaine didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her sweater pocket and unfolded a second sheet of paper, a printed spreadsheet, numbers neatly lined and color-coded. She handed it to Lily. "Here's what I would do," she said quietly. "That's every personal expense charged to the boutique's business account over the last 18 months. Designer shoes, weekend getaways, dinner tabs, some of it under Jordan's name, some under yours." Lily's face drained of color. She looked down at the page, scanning frantically. Jordan snatched it from her hands, eyes darting across the list. This is an invasion of privacy." Jordan's voice cracked. "You went through my accounts?" Elaine didn't blink. "Our accounts." Jordan froze. The distinction landed like a slap. "You can't just—" Jordan started, but the words faltered. "Actually, I can," Elaine said, her voice firm but quiet. "Thomas is drawing up a repayment plan. You'll both be receiving copies by the end of the week." Lily's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at Elaine. "You're really doing this," she murmured. "I already have," Elaine replied. The silence that followed was thick, pulsing with tension. Jordan looked like she might burst into tears or into rage. It was hard to tell which way it would go. "You're destroying everything," Jordan finally shouted. "Everything I've built." Elaine's expression softened, just slightly. "No, Jordan. I'm saving what's left." For a second, something flickered in Jordan's face. Hurt, maybe recognition, but it vanished just as quickly, replaced by fury. She crumpled the spreadsheet in her hand and threw it to the ground. "I can't believe you'd do this to me," she said, voice low and trembling. Elaine looked at her daughter, really looked at her. The girl who once built lemonade stands on this very lawn, who'd begged for her first sewing machine. The same girl who now saw her mother not as a person, but as an obstacle. "Jordan," Elaine said quietly, "you did this to yourself." Jordan's lip quivered, but she said nothing. Lily touched her arm, urging her toward the car. The two women turned, retreating across the yard, their heels clicking angrily on the walkway. As the car doors slammed and the engine roared back to life, Elaine bent to pick up the crumpled paper. She smoothed it out on her palm, the columns of numbers still legible despite the creases. Proof, she thought. And not just of money, but of motive. Inside, her phone buzzed. A message from Thomas. "Thomas, draft complete. Includes full repayment schedule and business audit clause. Want me to send copies to them or hold until Monday?" Elaine stared at the screen for a long moment, the hum of the departing car fading into the distance. She typed a single word back. "Send." The weekend came heavy and gray, like the sky itself was bracing for fallout. Elaine moved through her house in silence, her routines crisp and deliberate. She watered the plants, wiped the kitchen counters, folded laundry that didn't need folding, anything to keep her hands busy while her mind stayed sharp. By Sunday morning, she no longer felt anger, just clarity. The news feed lit up first thing that afternoon. Carla was the one who called it out. "Have you seen this?" her friend asked, voice carrying that edge of disbelief only social media could summon. Elaine put her glasses on and opened her phone. It took less than 5 seconds to find it. Jordan had posted a throwback photo of the two of them, an old one from the boutique's first year. The caption read, "Love my mom, always my inspiration." The image was glossy, softened by a vintage filter, her daughter's digital signature of sincerity. Elaine stared at it for a long moment. Her own face looked younger in the photo, softer, standing behind Jordan with one hand on her shoulder. She could almost smell the faint trace of lavender lotion she used to wear every morning back then, before boundaries became battle lines. The comment section bloomed with emojis and platitudes at first. "Oh, love this," and "mother-daughter goals." But then the tone shifted. Style Maven PDX. Didn't you forget her birthday last week? Alora Pedexco. Girl, this is damage control. All local truths. Maybe tag her next time you use her money. Elaine's thumb paused mid-scroll. Hundreds of likes, some of them laughing emojis, some with dagger-sharp words beneath. Carla sent a screenshot with a short message. They're losing the narrative. Elaine exhaled slowly through her nose, the smallest smile tugging at her lips. They always do, she murmured. Carla called immediately, her voice equal parts amused and righteous. I swear, Elaine, you don't even need to lift a finger. They're doing it to themselves. I know, Elaine said softly, leaning back in her chair. That's what happens when you build a brand on borrowed foundation. Still, Carla said, her tone shifting. You okay? You've been quiet since that showdown. Elaine looked out the window at her yard, the rose bushes she and Jordan had planted years ago. Their stems thick now, the blooms stubbornly hanging on despite the cold. I'm fine, she said. Better than fine. Carla hesitated. What's next? Elaine smiled faintly. Housekeeping? The kind you can't post online. Later that afternoon, Elaine sat at her desk, papers spread before her in a tidy array. She'd already changed the trust. Now came the smaller, quieter work, the parts no one saw but everyone felt later. She logged into her financial accounts, her fingers moving with practiced precision. One by one, she reviewed each beneficiary field. A few clicks here, a few reassignments there. A scholarship foundation placeholder. Carla as emergency executor. Jordan's name disappeared like ink wiped from glass. Each change felt like breath returning to her lungs. She didn't post about it. She didn't even tell Carla. Some victories didn't need witnesses. The phone rang, a number she recognized now without hesitation. Mrs. Monroe, came Dylan's steady voice from Cascadia Bank. Just wanted to let you know your new account is fully secured. The transfers went through without issue. Jordan won't have access to any linked assets moving forward. Elaine nodded, though he couldn't see her. That's good to hear. He paused. You'd be surprised how often people don't take steps like this. They talk about boundaries, but they never build them. I used to be one of them, she said quietly. Well, Dylan said, a hint of warmth in his tone. Not anymore. When they hung up, Elaine sat for a long moment, letting the quiet stretch. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. She noticed it in the way the afternoon sun fell through the blinds, or the way her breath no longer caught when her phone buzzed. She picked up her coffee and took a slow sip, scrolling back once more to Jordan's post. It was still there, still collecting comments, most of them skeptical now, some outright cruel. A small war playing out in the open. Elaine didn't like cruelty, even when it was earned. But she wasn't going to step in. Not this time. She powered off her phone, folded the beneficiary forms neatly, and placed them in her filing cabinet under Final. The cabinet clicked shut with a soft metallic note. That night, as the rain began again, Elaine stood at her front window. Across the street, the boutique's neon open sign flickered weakly against the stormlight. A soft ping from her computer broke the quiet. An email from Thomas. Subject: Lease audit complete. Body: figures higher than expected. We'll need to discuss repayment schedule in person. Monday morning work for you? Elaine stared at the message for a moment, then smiled. Reply: perfect. Let's finalize everything. She hit send, turned off the lamp, and let the dark fill the room. The mediation office was tucked inside an old red brick building downtown, neutral ground, or so Lily had called it. The word mediation hung in Elaine's mind like a half-hearted apology someone else had written. She arrived early, Thomas Reed was already seated at the long oak table, his tablet glowing faintly. "We'll keep it straightforward," he said quietly. "Facts, documentation, and nothing personal unless they make it personal." Elaine gave a faint smile. "They will." Outside the glass door, Carla sat in the waiting area with a takeout latte and a crossword puzzle. She caught Elaine's eye through the glass and lifted her cup like a silent toast. Elaine nodded back, the gesture steadying her. Then the elevator doors opened. Jordan walked in first, her sunglasses too large for an overcast day, her lips pressed thin. Lily followed, her phone in hand, whispering something that sounded rehearsed. They looked polished but tense, like PR reps walking into a fire they started themselves. "Mom," Jordan said, voice clipped, formal. Elaine nodded in greeting but said nothing. She motioned to the chairs across the table. Lily offered a brittle smile. "Thank you for meeting us. We thought it might help to talk things out, civilly." "Of course," Elaine said smoothly, folding her hands. "That's what adults do." Jordan shifted in her seat. "Look, this whole thing has gotten way out of hand. Freezing the accounts? Terminating the lease? You're overreacting. You're punishing us for being independent." Elaine studied her daughter's face, the twitch at the jawline, the practiced calm. "Is that what you think this is? Punishment?" Jordan's chin lifted. "You've always needed control, Mom. Always had to remind everyone who the real boss is. You don't like that I've made something of myself." Elaine let the words hang there. The silence stretched just long enough to make Jordan fidget. Then she reached for the small remote in front of her. "I brought something," she said quietly. The lights dimmed slightly as Thomas tapped the tablet. The first slide flickered onto the wall-mounted screen, an itemized spreadsheet, each row a snapshot of history. "Account activity," Elaine explained evenly. 18 months of boutique expenses. The list scrolled automatically. Boutique supplies, inventory, payroll, then a sharp pivot. Sephora, $426.18. Weekend at Salishan Spa. Hotel Indigo, Seattle. 2 nights. Gas, rental cars, dinner tabs. Elaine didn't look at Jordan. She didn't need to. She could feel the air shift. Lily sat stiffly beside her, eyes darting between the screen and the table. "These were charged under business funds," Thomas said, voice calm, factual. "All from accounts tied to Mrs. Monroe's financial backing." Jordan's face went red. Those are just incidental charges. You said the business card was for emergencies." Elaine finally looked up. "Jordan, a $600 handbag is not an emergency." Thomas clicked to the next slide, a color-coded bar chart, bright and unforgiving. "As of last month, the boutique owes Mrs. Monroe $84,322.18 in unapproved expenditures." Jordan made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "This is ridiculous. You're turning spreadsheets into weapons." Lily reached over, touching her arm. "Jordan, don't," Jordan snapped, jerking away. Elaine watched them both, calm as still water. "You wanted to talk it out," she said softly. "So talk." Jordan's voice trembled now. "I was building a brand, Mom. You think it's easy? You think followers just happen? Everything costs money when you're trying to keep up, when you're trying to matter." "And you thought my money made you matter?" Elaine asked. Jordan froze. Elaine leaned forward slightly, her voice quieter but sharper. "You could have asked for help. You could have been honest. But you used me like an overdraft. And now you're shocked there's a limit." Lily looked down, whispering, "Maybe we should just agree to repay." Thomas slid a folder across the table. Already drafted. Repayment schedule, itemized totals, signatures required by end of week. The papers landed in front of Jordan with a soft, deliberate thud. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Jordan's shoulders started to shake. The anger drained, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar. Panic. I can't pay that, she said, her voice cracking. I don't have that kind of money. Elaine didn't move. Then you'll learn how it feels to work for something you've taken for granted. Tears gathered in Jordan's eyes, smudging the careful eyeliner she'd probably applied for this very meeting. She looked at Lily, desperate for backup, but Lily stayed silent, her expression unreadable. Thomas cleared his throat. We'll expect a response within 5 business days. If not, the matter escalates legally. Jordan covered her face with her hands, her voice muffled. You're really doing this to me. Elaine's reply was soft, final. No, Jordan. I'm doing this for me. She gathered her things and stood, the chair sliding back with a slow scrape across the floor. Thomas followed, professional and composed. As they exited, Carla rose from the waiting area, eyes sharp with curiosity. Elaine simply nodded to her friend, no words needed. Behind the glass, Jordan sat motionless, hands still pressed to her face. The faint sound of her sobbing carried just enough to reach the hallway. The papers were signed on a Wednesday. No ceremony, no raised voices, just the faint scratch of a pen gliding across thick legal paper. Elaine didn't tremble as she signed the final page. Thomas sat across from her, calm as ever, watching her reclaim what had always been hers. That's it, he said, sliding the file into a leather binder. The buyout clause is triggered. You now have full authority over all assets under Juniper and Slate LLC. Elaine nodded. And the contents? Liquidation begins immediately, Thomas said. We'll post a notice in tomorrow's paper, and the court will confirm ownership before close of business Friday. Good, Elaine said, folding her hands. Then let's make sure every shelf and hanger is cleared. Thomas smiled faintly. You don't do anything halfway, do you? Not anymore. By Friday, word had spread faster than a rumor in church. The boutique's glass windows, once home to glossy displays and curated lighting, were plastered with a single white sign, closed for liquidation, by order of ownership. Inside, the space felt smaller than Elaine remembered. The walls were bare in spots where art had been taken down, the air smelling faintly of perfume and dust. Carla stood near the counter, a roll of packing tape hanging from her wrist. Well, she said, surveying the rows of untouched clothes, I always thought the stuff was overpriced anyway. Elaine chuckled softly. That makes 2 of us. Together, they began packing the shelves, carefully folding dresses, boxing accessories, sorting jewelry by color. Carla worked fast, humming something off-key, while Elaine labeled each box with clean, methodical handwriting. What are you planning to do with all of this? Carla asked. Elaine paused mid-label, the question hanging in the quiet air. I've already decided, she said. There's a program on the East Side, helps single mothers start small businesses. They need inventory for their resale shop. I'll donate everything. Carla looked at her, impressed. You're giving away her empire. I'm giving it back to someone who'll appreciate it. They worked until their hands ached, and the boutique's polished image had been reduced to cardboard and packing slips. The shop that once symbolized Jordan's independence now looked like what it had always been, an inheritance wearing someone else's name. That afternoon, Thomas called from his office. They filed for a temporary stay, he said. Elaine's hand tightened on the phone. And? Denied. Judge saw the trust documentation. You're in the clear. A quiet exhale left her lungs. Then it's done. For them, yes, Thomas said. For you, it's closure. Elaine thanked him and hung up, watching the late sun glint against the boutique's now empty windows. By evening, the story had made its way online. An anonymous post started it. Then it spread. Ours Portland style scene. Rumor has it Juniper and Slate's owner was never the owner. Legal docs show it belonged to her mother. Thoughts? Within hours, the internet was ablaze. Ag civic chick. Wait, She built her whole brand on her mom's money? Artin Truth, Thread PDX. Wild how she's crying independence but living off inheritance. Melrose Maven. Justice for Elaine Queen Energy. Elaine saw snippets of it through Carla's phone. She didn't scroll, just smiled once and said, "Truth has a way of trending." Meanwhile, across town, Jordan's phone was lighting up like a warning beacon. She sat on her couch, laptop open, Lily pacing behind her. "This is spiraling," Lily said, checking her feed. "People are turning on us." "I can fix it," Jordan muttered, eyes darting across the screen. "I just need to tell my side. People love a comeback." She started typing furiously, her fingers flying across the keys. A new GoFundMe page appeared. "Help me rebuild what was taken from me." The description was a blend of self-pity and spin. "My mother, yes, my own mother, has taken control of my store. I'm heartbroken, blindsided, and trying to start again." For a brief moment, it worked. Donations trickled in, sympathy money from strangers who hadn't yet seen the full picture. But then someone posted the court documents, screenshots of the LLC filings, the trust revision, Elaine's verified signature as primary owner. The comments turned vicious fast. "It's just Jules. So you lied about owning the business?" "Eek Truthfinder PDX. Girl, your mom built that store. Sit down." Kent Shelby Kong Lane. "Imagine stealing from your mom and then asking us to pay for it." The donation counter froze at $318 before GoFundMe flagged it for inaccurate claims and locked the account. Lily backed away from the laptop. "Jordan, it's over." Jordan's voice cracked. "No, it's not. It can't be." But even as she said it, the page refreshed, and the campaign disappeared. Gone. Back in Montevilla, Elaine was stacking the final donation boxes into Carla's trunk. The air smelled of rain and cardboard, and for once, she didn't feel tired, just steady. Carla shut the trunk and looked at her friend. "You really think giving all this away will make her understand?" Elaine shook her head. "No, but it'll make me free." She wiped her hands on her jeans, the faintest smile on her face as thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance. The morning the GoFundMe went live, Elaine's phone started buzzing before breakfast. Carla was the first to call. "Have you seen it?" she asked, her tone a mixture of fury and amusement. Elaine poured her coffee, unfazed. "Seen what?" "Your daughter," Carla said flatly. "She's got a full-blown pity campaign going. My mother stole my business. It's already spreading." Elaine set her mug down and walked to the kitchen window. Rain streaked the glass in silver lines, blurring the shapes of the neighborhood. She opened her laptop with a quiet sigh and typed Jordan's name into the search bar. There it was. A banner photo of Jordan, tearful and defiant, standing in front of Juniper and Slate's empty storefront. The campaign title screamed, "My mother stole my business." The description below was just as dramatic. "After years of hard work building a small business, my own mother, who was supposed to support me, took everything. I'm fighting back to rebuild. Every donation helps me rise again." Elaine's lips parted, not in shock, but in something like disbelief. She scrolled through the list of donors, names she didn't recognize, small contributions dripping in from strangers moved by a good sob story. "She's quick," Carla said over the phone. "I'll give her that." "Too quick," Elaine murmured, "and too careless." Within hours, the internet did what it always did. It investigated. It started with a thread on Reddit, then a user on Twitter. A local journalist dug deeper. Or's Truthfinder PDX. Public records show Juniper and Slate LLC was never in Jordan Monroe's name. Her mother, Elaine, held majority ownership since day one. Receipts don't lie. The thread exploded. Tax documents, business filings, and trust revisions surfaced online. screenshots with Elaine's tidy signature at the bottom of every page. Keen civic chick. So the stolen business was never hers? Our style scene PDX. Girl built a brand on mom's wallet and then cried theft. Wild. Northwest Notebook. Local boutiques beware. Check who's paying your bills. Elaine scrolled through a few of them, her expression unreadable. She wasn't celebrating. It wasn't victory she felt, just a quiet confirmation of what she already knew. Truth didn't need her defense. She closed the laptop and returned to her coffee, the rain outside softening to a mist. By late afternoon, GoFundMe had frozen the account. The page banner turned gray, the donation tracker locked mid-number, 31847. Carla texted a screenshot, account under investigation for fraudulent claims. Elaine typed back a single word, predictable. Hours later, the campaign disappeared entirely. Jordan deleted the link. The post that had once begged for sympathy now redirected to an error page. Still, the internet wasn't done with her. Screenshots lived on, reposted endlessly. Memes, think pieces, threads dissecting the psychology of entitlement. Jordan had built her persona on glossy empowerment quotes and curated brunch photos. Now, the same audience that had once adored her was gleefully dismantling her brand. That evening, Elaine logged into her own bank account. The single mother startup fund she donated the boutique's inventory to had posted a new update online. We've received an incredible influx of clothing and materials from an anonymous donor. This will help dozens of women launch their businesses this year. Elaine stared at the photo attached. A group of smiling women standing beside the racks of carefully boxed dresses she and Carla had packed just days earlier. Something in her chest eased. Without hesitation, she opened her new secured account and typed in a figure. $10,000. A quiet gift. Anonymous. No press release. No announcement. Just an act of balance in a world that had forgotten what fairness looked like. She clicked Submit, and the confirmation email arrived seconds later. The subject line read, "Thank you for believing in beginnings." Elaine sat back in her chair, feeling lighter than she had in months. Her phone buzzed again, this time from an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, but something in her gut said otherwise. "Mrs. Monroe?" came Dylan's voice, low and measured. "It's Dylan Porter from Cascadia Bank. I thought I should give you a heads up." Elaine's pulse slowed. "What's happened?" He hesitated. "Your daughter attempted to access your credit profile this morning. She used an old joint authorization from years ago. It triggered a security alert." Elaine closed her eyes. She really can't help herself. "Don't worry," Dylan said quickly. "Nothing went through. I've already placed a full block and updated your credentials. But I figured you'd want to know." Elaine exhaled, steady and calm. "Thank you, Dylan. I appreciate the call." There was a pause on the line, then his voice softened. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Monroe, you've handled this better than most people would. You didn't just protect yourself. You corrected the record." Elaine smiled faintly. "That's what accountants do, Dylan. We balance the books." He chuckled softly. "Then I'd say your balance sheet's looking very good." After the call ended, Elaine sat in the quiet of her kitchen, phone still in hand. Outside, the street lamps reflected against wet pavement, each light a small halo in the dark. She thought about Jordan, not the woman posting apologies online, but the girl she used to be, the one who once painted "Dream Big" in glitter glue on a shoebox, calling it her first store. Elaine's hand trembled slightly, then steadied. "Dreams without gratitude," she whispered, "don't last." The week after the GoFundMe debacle, Portland's winter sky hung low and colorless. Elaine spent her mornings by the fireplace, sipping dark roast while paperwork stacked neatly beside her, a slow rebuild, not of chaos, but of order. Thomas had called 2 days earlier with an idea that made perfect sense. You should trademark Juniper and Slate, he had said. It's still technically your intellectual property. They may try to rebrand under a variation. Get ahead of it. Elaine had smiled at the word ahead. For once, she wasn't reacting. She was anticipating. Now her laptop glowed with the official confirmation: U.S. trademark registration, Juniper and Slate, serial number 8764 Zone 12. She leaned back in her chair, letting the sound of rain pattering against the window soothe the edges of her focus. The digital certificate sat on the screen like a crown reclaimed. She forwarded a copy to Thomas with a simple note. Subject: done. Body: they can't even borrow the name now. The message had barely left her inbox before the next chapter began. That afternoon, Carla called again, her tone half outrage, half disbelief. Guess what Lily just posted? Elaine raised an eyebrow. I'm almost afraid to ask. Carla's laugh was short, humorless. A teaser video. Same aesthetic, same logo style. New name: Slate and Sage. She's tagging it as a fresh start inspired by resilience. I almost spit my coffee. Elaine turned toward her laptop, fingers already typing. Within seconds, the clip filled her screen. Lily stood in a sunlit studio, ring light gleaming, her voice syrupy and confident. Sometimes life knocks us down and we rebuild stronger, she cooed. Slate and Sage is for women who rise above toxic partnerships and take back their power. Elaine's lips curved, not in anger but in grim amusement. Toxic partnerships? She murmured. Cute. She didn't need to raise her voice. She just picked up her phone and dialed Thomas. He answered on the second ring. I saw it already, he said, his voice tight with professional irritation. It's a blatant derivative. We'll send the cease and desist before they can even upload inventory. Make it clear, Elaine said, her tone calm but edged with steel. They don't just lose the name, they lose the narrative. By the next morning, the letter was drafted and sent. A courier hand-delivered it to Lily's new business address, an industrial space in the Pearl District, rented under her name but funded, predictably, through a half-empty account. Elaine didn't need to be there to imagine the scene. Lily reading the first line, her confidence cracking, the dawning realization that every ounce of borrowed power was evaporating. The email confirmation came through at 9:42 a.m. Delivery confirmed. Recipient signature, L. Tran. And by 10:00 a.m., the Slate and Sage Instagram account was gone. Thomas called shortly after. Done. They're shut down across all platforms. I'll forward the press release in an hour. Press release? Elaine asked. Public ownership statement, he clarified. We'll make it official. Your name, your rights, your closure. Elaine nodded slowly. Good. Let's make sure the city knows who really built it. The article dropped by evening. Local outlets picked it up immediately. Portland business icon reclaims ownership of Juniper and Slate. After a legal review, retired accountant Elaine Monroe has reasserted trademark control over the popular boutique brand she co-founded with her daughter, citing unauthorized financial use and breach of contract. The headline ran with a photo of Elaine, one Thomas's assistant had insisted on taking. She looked poised, composed, not triumphant but unshakable. The accompanying quote read simply, "Some lessons cost money, others cost illusions." Carla nearly screamed with delight when she saw it. "Oh, honey," she said on speakerphone, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. "You just dropped the classiest mic in Oregon." Elaine smiled softly. "I didn't drop it, Carla. I just stopped handing it to the wrong people." But not everyone saw it that way. Hours later, Jordan resurfaced online, her first post in days. A black and white photo of her own tear-streaked face, captioned in bold. "This is elder abuse." Elaine saw it within minutes. For a heartbeat, she just stared, At the desperation behind the words, the performative ache meant to shift the blame back where it no longer belonged. Then a notification popped up beneath it. Carla's profile picture. Carla says, "What?" No. It's accountability. Hundreds of likes appeared beneath Carla's comment within the hour. The internet didn't buy Jordan's pity act this time. Sympathy fatigue had set in. By the time the post started fading from people's feeds, Elaine was back at her desk, the faint hum of her printer filling the silence. She tucked the trademark certificate into her records, right beside the trust revision and lease documents. Every decision, every reclaiming, neatly organized in the order she'd taken them back. Outside, the city lights reflected across puddles in the street, and for once, the reflection looked clear. No distortion, no noise. She powered down her laptop and whispered to the empty room, "Names have power. I just took mine back." The courthouse smelled faintly of lemon polish and nerves. Elaine adjusted the lapel of her blazer as she followed Thomas down the marble corridor. Her heels clicked softly, steady, deliberate, each step a reminder of how far she'd come from that first frozen bank alert. The courtroom doors opened with a quiet groan. Inside, rows of polished benches gleamed under fluorescent lights. The air hummed with murmured whispers and the faint rustle of papers. Jordan was already there. She sat at the plaintiff's table in a crisp black blazer, posture stiff, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Lily wasn't beside her this time, just a young attorney who looked barely out of law school, his tie slightly crooked. Elaine met her daughter's gaze once, briefly. There was no anger there anymore, just something hollow. Jordan looked smaller than she remembered. "Ready?" Thomas asked quietly. Elaine nodded. "Let's finish it." The judge entered, robe swaying as everyone rose. The courtroom settled into silence. Case 24-1097, the clerk announced. Monroe versus Monroe. Petition for trust revision challenge. Jordan's attorney stood first, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, my client asserts that the revised trust executed by Mrs. Anastasia Monroe is invalid due to undue influence and potential cognitive impairment." Elaine's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression calm. The judge looked unimpressed. "Evidence?" The young lawyer hesitated before producing a folder. "We submit that Mrs. Monroe's actions over the past several months, freezing accounts, altering beneficiaries, liquidating shared assets, suggest instability." Thomas rose smoothly. "Objection, Your Honor. These actions were all within Mrs. Monroe's legal rights as majority trustee and documented by both bank and estate counsel. I have the full audit trail, including medical verification of her mental competency." The judge gestured. "Proceed." Thomas handed over a sealed envelope. Exhibit C, cognitive evaluation from Dr. R. Chen, neurologist and clinical psychologist, conducted last month at Mrs. Monroe's request. The judge flipped through the report briefly. Exemplary cognitive function, logical, decisive, and consistent judgment. Hardly the profile of someone under undue influence. Jordan's lawyer paled. "Anything further?" the judge asked. Jordan stood suddenly. "Your Honor, I just want to say—" "Ms. Monroe," the judge interrupted sharply. "You have counsel. Please sit down." But Jordan didn't sit. "She's been planning this for months. She's making me look like some villain online. She's turned people against me. Everything I've built." Thomas spoke evenly. "She built it, Ms. Monroe. You used it." Jordan's face flushed. "That's not fair." The judge raised a hand. "Enough. This isn't social media, it's court." Jordan's mouth closed, trembling with unspent words. The judge turned toward Elaine. "Mrs. Monroe, would you like to make a statement?" Elaine rose slowly, her hands steady against the polished table. "Only this, Your Honor. I didn't take anything from my daughter. I reclaimed what I built, what I saved for. I taught her how to balance a checkbook, how to stand on her own feet. But I can't make her stay standing. She wanted independence. I gave it to her. For a moment, the room was silent. Even the fluorescent buzz seemed to dim. The judge nodded once. Well said. He turned back to the file before him. Based on documentation, medical confirmation, and the absence of legal evidence to the contrary, the court upholds the revised trust and all associated changes. Thomas exhaled quietly beside her. Elaine simply bowed her head in acknowledgement. The judge continued. The plaintiff's petition is denied. Costs to be borne by Miss Monroe. The gavel fell with a solid, echoing crack. Jordan stood frozen for a heartbeat before shoving her chair back, the legs scraping harshly across the tile. You win, she spat. Congratulations. Elaine didn't respond. Jordan's voice cracked. You ruined everything. Elaine's reply was barely above a whisper. No, sweetheart. I just stopped paying for it. Jordan's eyes glossed over with tears. She turned abruptly, storming down the aisle, her heels clattering like firecrackers against the marble floor. The courtroom doors swung shut behind her. Afterward, Elaine and Thomas stepped into the chilly Portland afternoon. The rain had let up, leaving the air sharp and clean. Carla was waiting by the courthouse steps, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. Well? She asked. Thomas smiled faintly. Justice delivered in triplicate. Carla handed 1 cup to Elaine. To peace? Elaine shook her head softly. To closure. They walked in silence for a few blocks until Thomas peeled away toward his car. Carla lingered at the corner, watching Elaine turn down a side street toward home. The old neighborhood looked the same. The hydrangeas trimmed, the porches swept, but Elaine saw it differently now. Every house, every step, felt earned. By the time she reached her front gate, dusk had settled in. She paused at the walkway, breathing in the damp air. No celebration, no champagne. Just the quiet pulse of closure beating steadily in her chest. She unlocked her door, set down her bag, and let the stillness wash over her. By early spring, Portland had shed its gray. The sky opened wider, and the city smelled faintly of wet cedar and coffee again. For Elaine, the change in weather matched the quiet rhythm of her days, a peace earned, not given. The boutique stood empty for weeks, its windows gathering dust and handprints from curious passers-by. Each time Elaine drove by, she saw the faint outline of the old juniper and slate lettering still ghosted on the glass. Once, she might have felt sentimental. Now, she only saw potential. Thomas met her there one morning with a clipboard and a cup of black coffee. "You're sure about this?" he asked, glancing at the for sale sign leaning tiredly against the door. Elaine nodded. "Completely. It's time it belongs to someone who'll use it for the right reasons." They stepped inside. Sunlight spilled across the empty hardwood floor, illuminating faint scuff marks where clothing racks once stood. Dust danced through the air, slow and weightless. Thomas handed her a pen. "Offer price finalized. Once you sign, it's yours. No co-signers, no business partners, no surprises." Elaine smiled faintly. "Just the way I like it." She signed, her pen gliding smoothly across the page. The sound was small, but final. Thomas shook her hand. "Congratulations. You're a property owner again?" "No," Elaine said softly, looking around the empty space. "I'm a caretaker this time." Renovations began within a week. The smell of fresh paint replaced the stale perfume that had lingered since Jordan's last day. The gold lettering on the window came down, replaced by a new sign in matte white. The Common Thread. A community co-op. The concept was simple. Local women, artisans, and single mothers pooling resources, sharing rent, and selling under one roof. It wasn't about luxury anymore. It was about access. Carla walked through the space one afternoon, her hands on her hips, surveying the fresh paint and new shelving. "You know," she said, "for someone who claims to be retired, you've got more hustle than half the city." Elaine laughed, tucking a strand of gray hair behind her ear. "I was an accountant, Carla. We don't retire. We just change the math." Carla grinned. "So, what do you need me to do?" Elaine handed her a stack of forms. Co-manager, inventory, scheduling, and community outreach, and keep the coffee strong. Carla blinked. "Wait, you're serious?" Elaine's expression softened. "You were there when it fell apart. It's only right you're here when it starts again." Carla took the papers, a smile tugging at her lips. "You really do know how to rebuild from ashes." The grand reopening wasn't flashy. No influencers, no ribbon-cutting ceremony. Just neighbors, artists, and women who'd spent years being told their ideas weren't marketable. Elaine stood near the back, letting Carla handle the introductions while she refilled the punch bowl. Customers trickled in steadily. A woman with paint on her hands asked about displaying her handmade journals. A young mother shyly brought in crocheted baby blankets. Every conversation was quieter than the old boutique's chatter, but every voice sounded more genuine. As the afternoon sunlight warmed the shop's front windows, Elaine allowed herself a small moment of pride. The space didn't shimmer with vanity anymore. It hummed with purpose. Her phone buzzed. A news notification flashed. Lily Tran relocates to Austin. Ready for a fresh start. Elaine smiled faintly. "Good," she murmured. "Start somewhere she doesn't own the rent." Another ping followed. A Jordan Monroe official. Followers. 41.3K. 5.9K. Elaine didn't even open it. She'd stopped measuring her peace in numbers. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by stacks of papers. Trust addenda, updated wills, revised insurance policies. Every asset, every dollar, every property now tied to the common thread. Thomas's email blinked on her screen. "All documents finalized. The co-op is now the sole beneficiary of your estate. Congratulations, Elaine. You've built something permanent." She typed back simply, "It was never about permanence, just purpose." Before shutting down her laptop, she noticed one last unopened envelope in her mail pile. The Cascadia Bank logo stamped neatly in the corner. She tore it open. Inside was a glossy certificate embossed with silver lettering. Fraud protection account fully secured. Client, Elaine Monroe. A sticky note from Dylan was attached. "You're sealed tight now, Mrs. Monroe. No more leaks." Elaine smiled and pinned the note to her corkboard beside her grocery list. "Thanks, Dylan," she whispered. "Good to know someone's still keeping watch." Later that night, as she locked up the co-op, a low breeze rattled the window panes. The city glowed soft and wet under the streetlights. She lingered in the doorway, listening to the faint hum of life returning to the shop. Voices, laughter, the sound of something new growing where something hollow once stood. She started toward her car when her phone buzzed again, an alert from her bank's address verification system. Notice: rental payment attempt declined. Insufficient funds. Account: Jordan Monroe. Elaine froze, eyes narrowing. Another message followed seconds later, automated but cutting all the same. Eviction notice issued. Apartment 4B, Rosegate Lofts. Her stomach sank, not with guilt, but with the weary understanding that some lessons only arrive when the bill does. She exhaled slowly, the night air cold against her breath. Carla's voice echoed in her memory. "You really think she'll ever learn?" Elaine had answered then what she knew now, quietly, honestly. "No, but I'm done paying tuition." She turned off the lights, locked the co-op door behind her, and walked toward her car. The reflection in the window showed not triumph, but a woman who had finally finished her own audit. Everything balanced. The rain hadn't stopped all week. It fell in soft, steady sheets, the kind that seemed to rinse the whole city clean and leave everything smelling faintly like wet leaves and slate. Elaine sat in her kitchen that Thursday evening, the lights dimmed low, sipping chamomile tea while a quiet jazz station played in the background. The phone rang. Not her cell. The old landline, the one she almost never answered anymore. She stared at it for a long moment, letting it ring twice, 3 times. On the fourth, she picked up. "Mrs. Monroe?" a hesitant voice asked. Young, unfamiliar. "Yes," she said slowly. I'm a friend of Jordan's. She asked me to call you. Her phone's been disconnected." Elaine's chest tightened, but her voice stayed level. "Go on." She's not doing great. The landlord changed the locks. She's been staying on a couch the last few nights. She asked me to call and see if you'd let her stay here." Elaine finished quietly. The line went still. "Yes, ma'am. Just for a few days, until she figures things out." Elaine's fingers traced the rim of her mug. The steam had gone cold. "Thank you for calling," she said finally. "You can tell her I got the message." She hung up before the girl could respond. It was nearly 10 minutes before the cell phone buzzed again, this time Jordan's name flashing across the screen. A borrowed number, the contact saved years ago under My Girl Fuyusek, long since stripped of its emoji. Elaine let it ring twice before answering. "Mom?" The voice on the other end was small, fragile. The sound of someone who hadn't slept, who'd run out of strategies and spin. Elaine didn't answer right away. She wanted to recognize the tone, to find even a fragment of the woman she'd raised, but all she heard was the same performance she'd come to know too well. "Mom, I need somewhere to stay. Just for a while. I'll find a new place. Elaine took a slow breath. "Where are you now?" "At a friend's," Jordan said quickly. "But it's temporary." "Please, Mom. I just need a few days to get back on my feet. You have the space. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate." Elaine pressed her palm against the cool countertop. "Jordan," she said softly, "I gave you years. You gave me invoices." Silence. A long, empty pause filled the line. "That's not fair," Jordan said, her voice trembling. "You don't know what it's been like. People have turned on me. Lily's gone. My followers are gone. You had a house?" Elaine interrupted gently. "You had choices. You just didn't like the ones that required work." "Mom, please," Jordan whispered, and in that single word was the faintest echo of the little girl Elaine used to tuck in at night, the one who'd whispered, "Don't turn off the light yet." Elaine closed her eyes, forcing the ache down. "You'll figure something out." "You always have." "Not this time," Jordan said, her voice breaking. "I'm your daughter." "Yes," Elaine said quietly, "and that's exactly why I'm not rescuing you again." The silence on the other end deepened until all that was left was the faint hiss of static. Then the call disconnected. Elaine set the phone down, her hand shaking just once before it steadied again. The next morning, Carla stopped by, 2 lattes in hand and her usual unapologetic bluntness in tow. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, setting the cups down. "Jordan called," Elaine said simply. Carla froze mid-sip. "Oh." "She wanted to come home." Carla's brow furrowed. "And you said no." Elaine nodded once. Carla clinked her mug gently against Elaine's. "Good. You don't owe her shelter. She had a house." Elaine gave a small, weary smile. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," Carla said. "She's grown. Let her be grown." For a moment, neither woman spoke. The co-op ledger sat open on the table between them, columns neat, expenses logged, The steady hum of a balanced life returning to order. Elaine reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a blank check. Her handwriting was as steady as ever, each loop measured, every digit deliberate. Pay to the order of Portland Women's Shelter Fund. Amount $5,000 Zakars. Memo. Emergency housing donation. Carla watched quietly. You're something else, you know that? Elaine shrugged. If I can't give her a home, I can give someone one. Carla's eyes softened. She'll never know. She doesn't need to, Elaine said, tearing the check neatly from the pad. That's the point. That evening, Elaine stood in the co-op after closing. The lights cast warm halos across the displays, the faint smell of lavender and cedar in the air. She flipped the open sign to closed, her reflection staring back at her from the glass. Steadier, older, but lighter than she'd been in years. She checked her phone. No new messages, no missed calls. Jordan hadn't reached out again. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The streetlight caught the drops as they fell. Soft, deliberate, cleansing. Elaine locked the door, tucked the day's ledger under her arm, and whispered into the quiet shop. She's finally learning what I already did. Help is something you earn. The morning of the co-op's grand opening dawned bright and cold, the kind of Portland day where sunlight felt like a reward. The air outside the common thread was alive with quiet anticipation, paper lanterns swaying in the breeze, strings of lights reflecting off the window that now bore the shop's new motto in soft gold lettering: community, craft, continuity. Elaine stood just inside the glass door, hands clasped in front of her. She'd been up since 5, double-checking the catering order, arranging the handmade quilts on display, and laying out neat rows of coffee cups beside the refreshment table. Everything gleamed, not in opulence, but in intention. Outside, a small crowd gathered. Local artists, journalists, neighbors, a few city officials. There were no influencers this time, no filtered lenses, no performative speeches. Just people who wanted to see something real built from something broken. Carla appeared at Elaine's side, her red scarf bright against the pale morning light. Place looks beautiful, she said, handing over a steaming cup of coffee. You sure you're ready to be famous again? Elaine laughed softly. This time, the story isn't about me. It's about what's left standing. Good answer, Carla said, sipping her own cup. Still, I made sure the press got your full name right. Elaine Monroe, founder, director, and resident miracle worker. Elaine rolled her eyes but smiled. Miracle worker is a stretch. I just stopped saying yes to the wrong people. Exactly, Carla said, grinning. Boundaries build better empires. At 10 sharp, the local paper's business reporter, a woman named Alexis Nguyen, with a soft voice and a hard notebook, stepped forward. Mrs. Monroe? She asked. Could we get a few words before the ribbon cutting? Elaine nodded. Leading her toward the display counter lined with pottery from one of the co-op's first members. Of course. Ask whatever you'd like. Alexis clicked her pen. You turned a private boutique into a public cooperative. Why? Elaine ran a finger lightly over a ceramic bowl, the glaze cool beneath her hand. Because ownership shouldn't be a weapon, she said simply. It should be a tool. I spent too long watching value be mistaken for vanity. I wanted to change that. Alexis scribbled quickly, her pen scratching across the page. And what would you say to people who think you're, well, starting over late in life? Elaine smiled faintly. They've confused late with done. They're not the same thing. The reporter's eyes softened. That's going in the article. By noon, the crowd had doubled. Balloons bobbed above the entrance. The chatter of conversation spilling into the street. A small local news crew set up a camera by the window, the anchor whispering lines into her mic before turning to the crowd. Thomas arrived just before the ribbon cutting, punctual as ever, his gray suit sharp against the spring sunlight. He nodded once to Elaine, his usual quiet approval needing no words. Carla was already standing by the makeshift podium, cue cards in hand. "All right, everyone," she said, raising her voice. "If you don't know this woman behind me, you should. Because she didn't just open a shop, she opened a door." The crowd applauded, and Elaine felt her cheeks warm. Carla went on, her tone proud but steady. This place wasn't funded by grants or investors. It was funded by boundaries. By a woman finally saying, "Enough. Every item on these shelves, every piece of art in this room exists because someone decided they were worth believing in. That's what this co-op stands for." Applause rippled through the crowd, louder this time, echoing against the brick facades of the neighboring buildings. Elaine took the scissors Thomas handed her, a ceremonial pair, silver and slightly too heavy, and stood before the crimson ribbon stretched across the doorway. She met Carla's gaze, then Thomas's, and said softly, "Let's close one chapter properly." With a clean, decisive snip, the ribbon fell. The crowd broke into applause. Cameras flashed. A few people even cheered. Elaine smiled, not for the cameras, but for herself. The day carried on in a blur of handshakes, laughter, and shared stories. A local singer performed by the window. Two little girls tried on donated scarves and spun in circles near the door. Elaine moved through it all like a steady current, welcoming, grounded, content. At one point, she caught sight of Thomas standing near the back, talking quietly with Alexis from the paper. When their eyes met, he raised his coffee cup in a small salute. Elaine returned the gesture, grateful for his quiet presence through every difficult turn. Later, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the crowd began to thin, Carla came up beside her, two empty cups in hand. "You did it," she said. "All of it." Elaine exhaled slowly, the weight of the last year settling finally into something light. "No," she said, smiling. "We did it." Carla leaned her head against her shoulder. "You know, it's funny," she said. "A year ago, you were crying into a spreadsheet." Elaine laughed softly. "Now I'm crying over Punch." They both laughed, the kind of laughter that feels earned, rough-edged, but real. As the last guests left and the shop grew quiet again, Elaine stood near the window, looking out at the soft glow of the streetlights. The reflection in the glass showed her surrounded by her choices, stronger ones, cleaner ones, choices made from clarity, not guilt. She turned the key in the door, sealing the day behind her. For a long moment she lingered there, listening to the hum of the city, the faint echo of voices fading into the night. And as the wind carried the scent of rain and jasmine through the air, she whispered to herself, "She forgot my birthday, but I remembered everything."